for liberation.
Today, we are talking about race and the origin of the concept race. We titled this Listening for Justice gathering, Race is All in Your Head. And I know you might be thinking racism feels very real. Well, racism is real, yet race is an illusion.
And we're going to expound on that thought by sharing with you a portion of a wonderful conversation that we had with Dr. Catherine Meeks. Dr. Meeks is the founding executive director of the Absalom Jones Episcopal Center for Racial Healing.
I think I've actually don't talk about dismantling racism as much now as racial healing, because I do think healing is the issue. And I don't think it's just around race. I think it's around a lot of things. And when people get well, they become intolerable of systems that don't work. You just won't tolerate a system that's not working when you have refocused your own lens and gotten to a point of being more well. And I feel so deeply that what we have to work for is having more and more people who are saying this system of separating people and oppressing people and denigrating people and categorizing people and pitting people against each other is so indefensible. It doesn't work. I don't care how much I benefit from it. I'm not going to be standing up for it. I'm going to be a resistor. The more resistors that we get, the more challenged the system will be and the least stable it will become. So I'm really always out here waving the flag for let's get well. Let's get well. And getting well means let's destabilize structures inside of ourselves and structures external to us that want to denigrate, marginalize, and oppress, so that I'm not oppressed by my own processes and I'm not going to oppress others because I don't have the need to, because I'm living liberated myself. And so have you ever had a day when, you got up and you just felt pretty horrible, and everywhere you went, somebody was just bouncing around like Pollyanna, excited and happy and glad the sun was shining, and you were kind of wishing it was a snow day, but you had to go out anyway. And they just get on your last nerve with their bounciness and their sun shining, and you just want to send them off to wherever. That's kind of how we are. When we're feeling good, we are glad to engage that energy that reminds us of what kind of day we're having. If we're not feeling too good, we would rather have a little bit more darkness and dullness around us, because that's where we are. So the more we allow ourselves to be healed, the more willing we are to allow for the culture to be healed. If you are walking around feeling pretty liberated because you've been confronting stuff and you've been paying attention and you've been listening to your own inner voices in community, and you've been dealing with them, and you've managed to accept what you need to accept and to let go of what you need to let go of, and to just live with the rest of it in some peace and harmony. If you have learned to do that, it makes it so much easier to go out into the world and carry that with you and engage it where you find it, where you find other people that are in that space, you can connect to them. And where you find people in turmoil, they don't disturb you, because you're bringing your own self out here, the self that you have been interrogating and working with, and you're intact. I was just thinking, there's a writer that you probably know. She wrote for colored girls who considered suicide when the rainbow is enough. And her name is Intizaka Shange. And her name means she who comes with her own things. And wellness is getting yourself where you come with your own things. You don't have to be defined by stuff that's external to you, because you've done that work. And Thurman says, growing up in the racist culture that he grew up in Florida, he had to come to grips with the necessity for him to know who he was and to protect it from all of those forces outside of himself that would want to destroy him. So it's such a a lesson. And it's a lesson that sounds like, when I just sit here and hear myself saying it, it just sounds kind of simple. But when I think about how long the journey is from being unconscious to waking up, and even knowing some of this stuff is even possible, and finding the pathway to try to get on the journey that can help lead to wellness, wholeness, healing, liberation, whatever you need to put at the end of that sentence, how long that journey can be, and how arduous that task can be, and how many community members we need to help us get there, which is part of the reason why it is so important to have allies and affinities and all kinds of folks that will help hold your hand so you stay the course. And the whole point is to, if you want to be well, and you want, do you really want to be well? And then you stop trying to negotiate the process. You start opening up to the process, whatever it is. As far as people of color, thinking that because we're the victims, we don't have to think about it. Well, we can have that attitude, but we also need to ask ourselves, do we want to be well? If we want to be well, we best deal with what has being a victim done to us. And what are we willing to give up? Are we willing to give up victimhood to be well? You know, do I want to go back over my life and just have racism be such a great wounder, and have that be my identity? Or do I want to pay attention? I'm not saying we don't acknowledge our history. You know, you don't get to throw your history away. It's real. It's not going anywhere. But do you want your history to define the rest of you for the rest of your life? Or do you want your history to be a foundation upon which to build a life you can envision that's different from the one that you had? Actually, there is not anybody in the United States that doesn't need healing and doesn't need good psychotherapy. And I'm guessing it's probably the whole world, but I don't live in the whole world, so I'm going to stick to the place where I'm living. But I'm willing to state that as an absolute, that you need to be interrogating the stuff inside of you to help you get clarity about who you want to be and how you want to be it, as you just try to work to discover God's imprimatur, God's mark upon you and who you are. So then that's the end of the conversation. As far as I'm concerned, I still have a therapist. I've had one for off and on for half my life. Thank God. A whole bunch of people can't afford it, and I understand it. But we can create other communities, other expressions where people can still do a lot of healing work if we decide to, and stop talking about we don't need it. We indeed do need
I
it.
have to really thank you for including Dr. Meeks in this whole process, because she was a revelation for me. I tell you, I was so moved by everything she said. I was taking notes when we had her as a part of our Learning for Justice program. And I think the thing that stands out to me the most is, looking at what it is that we do have to do. And it's all about healing, as she said. And those two questions, are you more interested in healing? Or are you interested in being white? And are you interested in healing? Are you interested in being a victim to our people of color? Questions we really need to be asking ourselves.
Hmm. Yeah, I will tell you that, she said a lot too about the importance of finding a way to be in the space and not be re-traumatized day after day, because we know these things are going to happen. And for her, that meant not watching the George Floyd trial. And that was affirming for me, because I'm not either. Because every time I've tried, I can feel some really strong emotions in my body. I really appreciate her for that, and so much more. And Pat, we got to tell people about Learning for Justice, right? Because we created it together when we were in our pilot, right, of Listening for Justice. We just weren't ready to be done when those 7 weeks were over. And what's been so beautiful about Learning for Justice, where we're focused on a pillar of society that we want to really unpack how racism shows up in that pillar and how we can dismantle. And my sister and I, of course, where are we? Culture, right? It was just so amazing to see how the conversations cut to the chase. Can you help me here, Pat?
Oh, no question. We're just digging deeper, and there because there's so much to this. It's more than one conversation or one series of conversations. After this, we will be leading for
Mhm.
justice. And I think that it's so important, this program, um, to be able to see it through as much as you can. We promise you, if you become engaged, you will fall in love with L4J.
Thank you. Yeah. And, when we say a movement to Pat, I just want to make it clear we're not saying we're creating an actual like movement. If you come, we are learning that listening in and of itself is a movement, y'all. And why? Because we ain't doing too much of that. Everybody already figured out what they believe and what they know, right? And
And
the
a lot of
missing
us,
lesson, no, go ahead.
and a lot of us, people of color, feel like, well, we already know everything and we don't need to even participate in this. But there's so much healing, as Dr. Meek said, that all of us have to do. And I
Yeah.
think that this is a great way to do it.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be doing it with my big sister. Thank you for listening for justice, learning for justice, and now we are listening for liberation.
Thank you for joining us.